How do you feel?
Feel great. Feel great. We've been on the road for quite a while with this race, and I mean, it's just great to finally let it kind of come to accumulation. We get to sign on the dotted line and really put our foot on the gas and get people engaged. And I think people have been kind of clamoring for it. We all got all over our presidential political hangover, and I think people are ready to move forward and start really engaging on the state issues, which are going to really matter.
Speaking of the presidential, a lot of, as you know, Republican candidates across the country and sitting senators have been commenting on Donald Trump's comments about the judge in his Trump University case, and Kelly Ayotte, I don't remember her exact words, but something to the effect of, they were comments that he should not have made. Do you have a problem with the comments that he's made about the judge?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're deplorable comments. Absolutely deplorable. I don't condone anything like that.
And would they change your support for him as a nominee?
No, I mean, I've always said I would support the nominee. Donald Trump is the nominee. I'm a firm believer that we do need to stand behind the nominee, especially on the Republican side. For me, the alternative would be disastrous for this country, really disastrous. So I stand behind him, and I hope he does well.
Does he owe an apology, do you think?
To the judge, absolutely. Sure. Look, one thing my mother taught me, manners first. Manners first. I mean, you can have disagreements with people, you cannot like where people are, whether you're personal or in business or politics. Manners first. I mean, you got to treat people with respect, and just because someone disagrees with you, you don't like the actions that they've taken, it doesn't call for words like that, ever.
Two of your Democratic rivals, I guess you'd call Colin Van Osler and Mark Connolly, are saying that they're going to put out their campaign cash numbers in mid-June. That's 2 months before the law says you have to do that. Is that something you would entertain?
No, the law says we file in August, so I plan to follow along, file in August when we're supposed to.
One of the issues in this race, several issues in this race, Syrian refugees. What's your position on accepting them?
Sure. So as I said, the statement we made when the issue really kind of came to a head last fall, was that unfortunately what we have in this country is a lack of a proper vetting process for these refugees. The idea that the Obama administration was going to take so many in without properly vetting them in a time where you have issues of terrorism, of danger, and potentially putting folks at risk. Until you can absolutely ensure the safety of people and the people you're in charge, the public trust is there in charge to protect, you can't just start opening your doors for political purposes, and that's exactly what that was about. A lot of the governors in this country stood up immediately, and I supported it when they said, you can't just flood us with refugees like this without properly vetting them to ensure the safety of our citizens. And I supported that very strongly, and I support that today.
So nothing's changed as far as your opinion is concerned? You're not confident that safeguards have been put into place since last summer?
I haven't seen anything that gives me any more confidence. This administration, again, and I mean, let's look at what's happening in Europe, right? They had a similar mindset. They took in tens of thousands of refugees, and they're having problems all over Europe with it. So you got to be able to have the proper safeguards in place. We don't have that right now in this country. I think we should make it a priority to try to enhance those safeguards, whether they're political refugees from Syria or just folks coming into the country. We have to have the proper safeguards. Health and safety is the first and foremost responsibility of the government.
So should you be elected, would you call on the federal government to not place refugees here?
No, I wouldn't. Well, you got to be careful. We've taken refugees in this state for years. The Syrian refugee crisis was a whole different animal. It really was, and it continues to be. As governor, my first call to the federal government is, if you're going to give us mandates and programs, if you're going to send these refugees to us, you better ensure to us and provide some sort of guarantee to us that these folks have been properly vetted appropriately, because right now they just can't do that. So it would be very unwise, I think, for anybody just to sit back and let the federal government send these refugees into the state.
Let's look, given your druthers, no refugees from Syria would be arriving here.
Until they can show us that they are properly being vetted, no.
What's your top priority? What would be your top priority?
Overall, in terms of an agenda, I think there's really three things that I talk about a lot, that I focus on, and this is really coming from the feedback, not just from the people, but that I get in my business, that my family and I experience in our schools. First and foremost, it's driving this economy forward. We have an absolute stagnant economy in the state. And you have states like Massachusetts that are breaking down barriers, they're removing regulation, they're doing the things it takes to drive business into their state. We don't have that, and we haven't had it for quite some time. I manage about 800 employees at Waterville Valley, so whether you're talking about the issues of healthcare or overregulation, environmental issues, whatever it might be, we deal with those every single day on a day-to-day basis. And people have to understand how policies truly are impacting people's lives. I have 800 people that I'm responsible for at Waterville Valley, and I take that incredibly seriously. And we spend so much of our time trying to figure out how we're going to succeed and thrive and grow in a state where we don't have the type of support we should have within the government. And sometimes that support comes in the form of getting out of the way. Let's lower some business taxes. Let's open the state up to business. Let's send a message out there to the rest of the country that we are going to be productive. I mean, a lot of you have seen the numbers recently. We are in the lower half of the country in terms of productivity and GDP and things that we really should be, and we traditionally have been very, very successful with. We don't have that success because we don't have anyone in the corner office that has a business mindset, that understands how these things impact folks, and that can really, again, appreciate the variables that come into play. Everyone has very well-intended consequences here in Concord, but if you're not living these issues day to day, you're going to miss the boat. Education is something I talk about very, very. I think it's a very important aspect of the state, and it's not because it's a political talking point. It's because I'm a dad. It's because I'm in my kid's school. You want to talk Common Core? I'm strongly against Common Core, and I'll tell you why. Because I'm living it with my 4th grader and 5th grader in my school every day. And the massive amounts of standardized tests and the erosion of quality curriculum in our classrooms. I hear it from teachers, I hear it from other parents, and as a parent, that is something I know we need to change and we need to strive forward for in this state. And finally, in many ways, most importantly, is the opioid crisis. No issue in this state has had more lack of leadership, yet required more attention than the opioid crisis. When you have 1,000 people dead in the last 2 years, over 1,000 people died from this crisis. That's 1,000 families torn apart. That is tens of thousands more that have drained their bank accounts and their 401ks trying to get help for loved ones. This is an absolute crisis across the state, and we've had no leadership in Concord. We've had no leadership at the local level. We need a completely different mindset to tackle this and take it head on. There's not going to be a golden answer out of Concord, but you need leadership to change the culture. You need leadership that puts the right people in place, that brings people together, puts ideas on the table, and actually has action behind their words.
Is there any specific ideas you have on that front?
On the
opioid crisis?
Boy, there's a lot of a couple things. We need more beds. We need more recovery centers up in the North Country. My program looks at much stronger preventative programs, specifically in schools. Look, at my 4th grader and 5th grader, I'll tell you, they're going to be offered alcohol, marijuana, and pills in the next 3 years. And that is a hard thing for a parent to accept, but I just know it's going to happen. So we need to be aggressive, much more aggressive, with our programming in school. And then we need to take those prevention programs and not just provide a program to a child and send them home. My program looks at bringing the parents in, the stakeholders in. What are the warning signs that they can look for? This is not the old days of drug addiction. This is a whole new ballgame. It's cheap, it's highly addictive, it's very hidden within our society, so we have to be aggressive about it. The second part of my program takes similar to what we do in schools, but I'm going to bring it into the workplace. High-risk work areas, food and beverage, construction. There are certain areas that are just much more prevalent, where opioids and drugs are much more prevalent. Let's give them the resources that they need to also help themselves. We've installed some workplace initiative programs at Waterville Valley because we don't have some of the resources that you have here down south. I want to bring those type of ideas that I've already implemented in my own business across the state to other employers in the state so that they have the tool to identify and provide the right help for their employees.
So what type of money does that take to do some of those things? I mean, is that more money for schools to implement those prevention programs? What is the funding?
Sure. Yeah, it's definitely more money. It's definitely more funding. I mean, what the exact number is, I don't want to go into
but
too
you're
many
willing
details,
to
right?
put more
Absolutely.
money towards
Absolutely.
this.
Anyone who thinks that we don't need some more funding into this issue is crazy. I mean, we've done well, but every day we see the numbers get worse and worse. And what are the indirect outcomes of it as well? You're seeing massive amounts of violence, the shootings, the assaults, the drug use, the death. This is not the New Hampshire I grew up in. I grew up in Salem. And if you told me I was going to be sitting here someday with headlines day after day that talk about the negativity that this epidemic has brought us, the death and the violence in our cities and in our towns, this is not the New Hampshire I grew up in. We can get back to it, but you need real leadership, decisive decision making to actually make a difference in these people's lives.
A lot of those headlines are coming out of Manchester. It's the largest city in the state, but it's also home of one of your rivals for the nomination. Do you think he's been doing an effective job?
I don't think anyone in the state has done an effective job. Look, I called for the drug czar to resign a year ago. It wasn't political, right? People dying is not a political issue. It's just common sense. We're here our job is to help people. right? But we have leadership at the top, at both the state and the local levels, in our towns and cities, that are too often making decisions for political reasons, instead of just making good, hard, strong policy decisions. Don't you think? Absolutely.
So I guess just on that, I mean, as far as leadership goes, you know, on the funding piece, you said anyone who thinks we don't need more money for this is crazy, and there have been a lot of Republicans in the legislature who have really questioned the funding piece. Not necessarily saying we do. Some have said we don't need more money. Some have said, are we spending the money
I
effectively?
think we need more money.
Okay, and you'd be willing to go to bat and potentially
Yes,
battle
because
with the Republican
unlike
lawmakers.
some of the leadership we've seen in the corner office today, I don't put politics ahead of making good policy decisions and driving forward good programs. That's exactly what we have too much of. Politics first? No way. No way. We need a complete change in mindset, and I'm going to bring that to the corner office.
The next question you'd be asked is when you talk about putting more money towards this, is that a shifting of resources, or is this?
Probably a combination. Shifting of resources, yeah. It's about priorities. Good leadership is about priorities, right? We all have our needs and our wants, whether you're in a business or your home or however, whatever you're managing in your life. We can't have everything you want. So you have to prioritize. And it sure does mean some shifting of resources. It means some hard decisions. And not everyone is going to like the outcome, but at the end of the day, you have to make sure you're driving forward on the priority items for the state, whether it be opioids or jobs or education. These are the things we have to tackle. These are the things that we really need to put our emphasis on.
It's a four-way competitive primary in the Republican side.
Is it?
Can you just, I mean, well, it sounds like you maybe think you're ahead. So can you just kind of talk to us about why are you the best candidate out of those four? What do you have that you're?
I'm the only candidate that lives and breathes these issues we're discussing here today every single day. Whether it's with my family, whether it's with my employees, whether it's in the North Country, or my living down on the seacoast. We need a someone who has regional perspective in the state. I've traveled this state for the last 8 or 9 months, listening to people, talking to people, understanding that the North Country is very different than the southern part of the state, and the seacoast is very different than the western part of the state. You have to have regional perspective. And again, whether you're talking about Obamacare, or high health care costs, or overregulation, or our lack of a long-term energy policy, I deal with these issues every single day as a manager, as a stakeholder. We haven't had anyone with that kind of background in the corner office in quite some time. And that's why we've been stagnated. I use a term, we've been slow-rolled into mediocrity in the state. The state's still great. We have a great state. But we've gotten complacent. And it's about time that we have someone in the corner office that has real perspective on these issues, understands how these issues truly impact people's lives, and is going to make the policies and differences to really make a change and get this state back on track.
Are we going to see your father on the campaign trail at all? We haven't heard much from him lately.
I'm running my race. He's supportive. Although I don't take anyone's vote for granted, you got to earn every one. It's one thing you learn in New Hampshire, right? Ruthie can attest. No, my father's semi-retired, and I'm running my race, and I'm out there. And again, we've gotten great feedback. So I'm very proud of the work we've done and the success we've had in terms of bringing my background and my experience, whether you're talking about business or education or whatever it might be, bringing that to the forefront. That's it.
Thank you.
One more, sorry.
In these days of federal overreach, what can the state government or the governor do to limit the damage to the state, its citizens, and its businesses?
Too often in the past 10 years in this state, we have heard the excuse from governors that say, well, it's a federal issue, we can't do anything about it. I don't believe in that. Look at the Syrian refugee. That's a great issue. That's a great example where governors stood up and said, this isn't right. There is a 10th Amendment. States' rights are an important aspect of what we do here. It's that local control that we cherish so much that made our state so different. We have to bring that back to the state. And we need a governor that's going to stand up for the state, whether you're talking about too much bureaucracy out of Washington, D.C. in terms of education, too much overregulation from the Environmental Protection Agency, whatever it might be. A governor that's going to stand up for businesses and individuals to make a difference. And again, stand behind New Hampshire ideals. I'm a big believer. When New Hampshire people do it New Hampshire way, we do it better than everybody else. And that's the attitude I'm going to bring to the state.
Super.
What do you think, buddy?
Leo for governor.
Crop TV.